In a bustling market filled with stories untold, a wealthy young woman mocks a humble vendor. But she has no idea her life is about to change forever. When a rich black girl ridicules a street vendor's handmade crafts, she thinks she's proving her superiority. But the bracelet he gives her holds a shocking secret, one that will leave her questioning everything she believes. Before we get into this unforgettable story, make sure you're subscribed to Epic Story Moments. Don't forget to hit that bell so you never miss another amazing tale. If you enjoy the story, like, share, and leave a comment. It helps us bring more heartwarming stories your way. And we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Let's stay connected. The market buzzed with life. The warm afternoon sun casting a golden glow over rows of colorful stalls. The chatter of vendors haggling with customers blended with the occasional clink of coins and the laughter of children weaving through the crowds. Amid the bustling energy, Amanda made her entrance. She walked with the air of someone who owned the world, her head held high, her designer dress catching the light, and her expensive heels clicking sharply against the cobblestone path. Heads turned, some admiring her style, others whispering about her obvious affluence. Amanda was used to the attention. She thrived on it. Her journey from a difficult childhood to the pinnacle of professional success had been a hard one, and she wore her accomplishments like armor. But beneath her confident exterior lay cracks. Insecurities buried deep, masked by her relentless drive to stay on top. As she meandered through the market, her eyes scanned the stalls with mild disinterest. Vendors called out to her, trying to tempt her with their handmade goods, but she brushed past them without a glance. Her attention was drawn to a modest stall tucked in the corner. It was simple, almost unassuming, decorated with an array of intricately crafted bracelets, necklaces, and carved trinkets. Behind the stall stood Mr. Elliot, an elderly man with kind, weathered eyes and a warm smile. His hands moved deftly as he polished a wooden pendant, his demeanor calm and welcoming. Amanda paused, more out of curiosity than interest, and approached the stall. "What are these?" she asked, picking up a bracelet made of polished wooden beads. She raised an eyebrow, her tone laced with condescension. "Looks like something my little cousin could make in arts and crafts." Mr. Elliot looked up, meeting her gaze with unshaken kindness. "Handmade by me," he said simply. "Each one carries a story. This bracelet, for example, represents resilience." Amanda scoffed, letting the bracelet fall back onto the table. "Resilience? It's just a bunch of beads on a string." Mr. Elliot chuckled softly, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Sometimes, the simplest things carry the greatest meaning," he said. "But perhaps it's not for everyone to see." Amanda folded her arms, her posture stiff. "Meaning? Please. People don't need meaning. They need success, money, power. That's what matters." "Is that what you believe?" Mr. Elliot asked, tilting his head slightly. "It's what I know," she replied sharply. For a moment, there was silence. Mr. Elliot studied her, his expression thoughtful yet unreadable. Amanda felt a flicker of unease under his steady gaze, as though he could see straight through her polished exterior. "Well," he said finally, picking up another bracelet and holding it out to her. "Take this. Wear it for a day. Perhaps it'll teach you something money can't buy." Amanda smirked, rolling her eyes as she took the bracelet. "Fine," she said, slipping it onto her wrist. "But don't expect me to come back with a life-changing revelation." Mr. Elliot's smile didn't waver. "We'll see," he said, his voice calm and assured. As Amanda walked away from the stall, she shook her head, dismissing the old man's words as nonsense. Yet, she couldn't shake a strange feeling, a subtle but persistent sense that there was more to the man and his trinkets than met the eye. Amanda continued to stroll through the market, the bracelet from Mr. Elliot dangling loosely on her wrist. It didn't match her style, but she hadn't removed it yet, if only to prove to herself how little his words affected her. She glanced back at his stall, watching as he chatted warmly with a young boy who eagerly handed over a few coins in exchange for a small wooden pendant. There was something irritating about his calm demeanor, as though nothing could shake him, no matter how insignificant he appeared in her eyes. Her steps faltered, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she turned back toward the stall. Mr. Elliot looked up and smiled as though he had expected her to return. "What's the deal with you anyway?" Amanda asked, crossing her arms. "You just sit here all day, selling these trinkets. Don't you want more out of life?" Mr. Elliot leaned back slightly, resting his hands on the edge of the table. "What makes you think I don't have everything I need?" Amanda let out a sharp laugh. "Because look at you. You're here, scraping by. You don't know what it's like to succeed, to achieve something big. People like you." She caught herself but didn't stop. "People like you wouldn't understand what it takes to really make it." Mr. Elliot didn't flinch. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. "It's true. I may not have what you call success, but I've found peace, and that's worth more than anything money can buy." "Peace?" Amanda snorted. "Peace doesn't pay the bills." "Maybe not," he replied with a gentle smile, "but it can help you face whatever comes your way. Peace is resilience, the ability to endure, to find joy even in difficult times." Amanda rolled her eyes. "You sound like one of those motivational posters. Resilience, peace, joy, none of that matters if you don't have power. If you're not in control, life just happens to you." I refuse to be one of those people who lets life push them around. For the briefest moment, something flickered in Mr. Elliot's expression, an understanding that unsettled her. He picked up another bracelet from the table and held it out. "This," he said, "is for those who think they already know everything. Wear it for a day. See what it shows you." Amanda hesitated, then smirked, taking the bracelet and sliding it onto her wrist. "Fine, but I promise you, this isn't going to teach me anything. Promises are funny that way," he said softly. Shaking her head, Amanda walked away again, this time determined to put Mr. Elliot and his cryptic words behind her. She wandered deeper into the market, feeling increasingly out of place. Vendors greeted her with polite smiles, but the warmth they had shown earlier seemed to have faded. It was as if they could sense her disdain, even without her saying a word. She reached into her purse, intending to buy a drink from one of the food stalls, only to realize her wallet was missing. Her heart sank as she rummaged through the bag, her movements becoming frantic. It wasn't there. "No, no, no," she muttered under her breath, trying to retrace her steps in her mind. Desperate, she approached one of the vendors she had brushed off earlier, a woman selling colorful scarves. "Excuse me," Amanda said, her voice tight. "I seem to have lost my wallet. Can I borrow some water? I'll pay you back as soon as I—" The woman's smile was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, miss. I can't just give things away. Maybe someone else can help you." Amanda swallowed her frustration and moved on, her desperation mounting with every rejection. It was as though the entire market had turned against her. She approached vendor after vendor, each interaction becoming more uncomfortable than the last. Finally, she slumped onto a bench near the edge of the market, exhausted and humiliated. Her designer heels pinched her feet, and her throat was dry from the heat. The bracelet on her wrist caught the light, and for a moment, she thought she saw it glimmer faintly. She shook her head, dismissing it as a trick of the sun, but the unease in her chest grew. For the first time in years, Amanda felt small, powerless, and entirely alone. The very feeling she had spent her whole life running from had caught up to her, and she had no idea how to escape. The market, once vibrant and lively, now felt suffocating to Amanda. The chatter and laughter of the crowd grated on her nerves as she sat on the bench, her head in her hands. The realization of her vulnerability gnawed at her. She was stranded, surrounded by people she had judged and dismissed. Every polite rejection from the vendors had deepened her frustration, and the weight of her situation pressed heavily on her chest. Her mouth was dry, and the heat seemed to intensify with every passing minute. She glanced at the bracelet on her wrist, its wooden beads catching the sunlight. For the briefest moment, she thought she saw it pulse with a soft glow, but she quickly dismissed it as her imagination, a trick of the light. "Are you okay?" Amanda looked up, startled. Standing in front of her was a young girl, no older than 10, holding a small bottle of water. The girl's wide, curious eyes studied Amanda with a mixture of concern and innocence. Amanda hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "I lost my wallet. I've been trying to get help, but..." She trailed off, unwilling to admit the truth. The girl smiled sympathetically and held out the water bottle. "Here, you look like you need this." Amanda blinked, her pride warring with her need. After a moment, she took the bottle, muttering a quiet, "Thank you." "I'm Emily," the girl said, sitting down beside Amanda. She swung her legs back and forth, her demeanor light and cheerful. "You're new here, huh? I've never seen you at the market before." "Yes," Amanda said, unscrewing the cap of the bottle and taking a long drink. The cool water was a relief, but the lump in her throat remained. "Mr. Elliot always says it's good to help people," Emily continued. "He says everyone has a story, and sometimes they just need a little kindness to change their day." Amanda's grip on the bottle tightened. "You know Mr. Elliot?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Emily nodded eagerly. "Oh, yeah. I buy his crafts all the time. He's really nice. He told me a story once about a bracelet just like the one you're wearing." She pointed at Amanda's wrist. Amanda looked down at the bracelet, her heart skipping a beat. "What did he say about it?" Emily tilted her head thoughtfully. "He said it's special. He said it can show people what they're missing, but only if they're ready to see it." A chill ran down Amanda's spine. She stared at the bracelet, her mind racing. The faint glow she had dismissed earlier suddenly felt significant. She opened her mouth to ask Emily more, but the girl stood abruptly, waving at someone in the crowd. "I have to go," Emily said, smiling. "But don't worry. Everything will make sense soon." Before Amanda could respond, Emily disappeared into the crowd, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The noise of the market seemed to fade, replaced by the pounding of her heart. Determined to make sense of what was happening, Amanda stood and made her way back to Mr. Elliot's stall. Her frustration and confusion bubbled to the surface, fueling her steps. She needed answers, but when she arrived, the stall was empty. The table was gone, the crafts and trinkets nowhere to be seen. It was as if Mr. Elliot had never been there at all. Amanda's chest tightened as she scanned the area, hoping to catch a glimpse of him in the crowd. Her eyes darted from one face to another, but none of them belonged to the man she was searching for. The bracelet on her wrist felt heavier now, its faint glow unmistakable in the dimming light of the evening. Amanda clenched her fists, her mind swirling with questions. Who was Mr. Elliot? What had he meant by seeing the truth? And why did she feel like she was on the edge of discovering something far bigger than herself? As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the market, Amanda stood alone, the weight of the unanswered questions pressing down on her. The bracelet's glow pulsed faintly, as if urging her to take the next step, but she had no idea where to begin. Amanda stood at the edge of the now darkened market, clutching her empty purse and staring at the spot where Mr. Elliot's stall had been. The faint glow of the bracelet on her wrist was like a mocking reminder of the strange events of the day. She felt a gnawing sense of unease. Something about this day, this place, was breaking her down in ways she couldn't understand. She took a deep breath, shaking her head to clear it. "I need to get out of here," she muttered. Turning toward the nearby street where she'd parked her car, she quickened her pace, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. When she reached the spot, her heart sank. Her car was gone. For a moment, she thought she had the wrong location, but the empty space and the sign warning about tow zones made it painfully clear. Amanda's frustration boiled over. "You've got to be kidding me," she shouted, drawing a few curious glances from passers-by. Reaching for her phone to call a tow company, she realized with horror that the battery was dead. Amanda stood frozen, clutching her useless phone, her breathing quick and shallow. The reality of her situation hit her like a tidal wave. She was stranded in an unfamiliar part of town, with no money, no transportation, and no way to call for help. The weight of her predicament pressed down on her, and for the first time in years, Amanda felt helpless. Her polished facade was cracking, revealing a vulnerability she had buried long ago. As she began walking aimlessly, trying to figure out her next move, she passed a small cafe with warm light spilling onto the street. A middle-aged man sat at a table outside, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. Desperation pushed her to approach him. "Excuse me," she said, forcing a polite tone. "I'm in a bit of a situation. My car's been towed and my phone is dead. Could I borrow yours to make a quick call?" The man looked her up and down, his expression guarded. "Sorry, miss, but I don't lend my phone to strangers. You never know these days." Amanda opened her mouth to protest, but stopped herself. His dismissive tone stung, and she realized he wasn't going to help her. She stepped back, muttering, "Right. Thanks anyway," before walking away, her frustration mounting. The night grew colder, and Amanda's exhaustion deepened. Memories began to creep in unwanted flashbacks of her childhood. She saw herself as a little girl, sitting on the worn couch of their tiny apartment, listening to her mother cry quietly in the next room. The electricity had been cut off again, and Amanda had promised herself that she would never, ever live like this when she grew up. She worked tirelessly, clawing her way out of poverty, determined to never feel powerless or dependent on anyone. But here she was, years later, right back in the place she had fought so hard to escape. Powerless, humiliated, and alone, her stomach growled, pulling her back to the present. She walked back toward the market, hoping to find some kind of help. A vendor selling roasted chestnuts caught her eye, the warm scent making her stomach twist with hunger. She hesitated before approaching. "Hi," she said, her voice softer than before. "I don't have any money right now, but is there any way I could get something to eat? I'll come back and pay you as soon as I can." The vendor, a stout woman with kind eyes, frowned. "I'm sorry, but I can't just give food away. I've got to make a living too, you know." Amanda nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I understand. Thank you anyway." She turned away, feeling the familiar sting of rejection. Each encounter chipped away at her pride, leaving her feeling more exposed and raw. She found herself wishing she could talk to Mr. Elliot, even if only to demand an explanation for the strange turn her life had taken since meeting him. The bracelet felt heavier now, the faint glow impossible to ignore. She glanced down at it, her frustration boiling over. "What are you trying to tell me?" she whispered harshly, as though the object could respond. The streets around her grew quieter, the bustling market now a distant hum. Amanda's thoughts were a storm of anger, fear, and confusion. She was no stranger to challenges, but this felt different. This wasn't a problem she could solve with her usual tools, money, power, or status. For the first time in years, Amanda felt truly out of control, and it terrified her. Amanda sat on the curb, her arms wrapped around her knees, the cold night air biting at her skin. Her exhaustion was overwhelming, and the pangs of hunger gnawed at her. The market was nearly empty now, the once bustling stalls reduced to a few vendors packing up their goods. The faint glow of the bracelet on her wrist caught her eye again, its steady pulse strangely comforting, yet deeply unsettling. "Amanda?" She turned toward the familiar voice and saw Emily approaching, her small figure illuminated by the soft glow of a nearby streetlight. Emily's bright smile was a stark contrast to Amanda's despondence, and for a moment, Amanda felt a flicker of relief. "You again," Amanda said, her voice heavy with fatigue. Emily plopped down beside her, unbothered by the cold pavement. "You look like you've had a rough day," she said, offering a small, wrapped sandwich from her bag. Amanda hesitated, pride battling with her hunger. But when Emily nudged the sandwich toward her again, Amanda took it with a quiet, "Thank you." As she unwrapped the food and took a bite, Emily watched her with a curious expression. "You know, Mr. Elliot would be really glad to see you wearing that bracelet, she said, pointing to Amanda's wrist. Amanda glanced down at it, her lips tightening. "What's so special about this thing?" she asked, her frustration seeping into her voice. Emily tilted her head thoughtfully. "He says it helps people see what they need to see. Not what they want, but what they really need." Amanda frowned, chewing on the girl's words. "That sounds like nonsense," she muttered, though her voice lacked conviction. Emily shrugged, unfazed. "Maybe, but Mr. Elliot's pretty amazing. He's helped a lot of people, like my mom and me." Amanda paused mid-bite, her curiosity piqued. "What do you mean?" Emily's smile softened, a hint of sadness creeping into her expression. "My mom lost her job last year, and things got really hard for us. We couldn't even afford food some days. But Mr. Elliot always gave me little things to take home, bread, fruit, sometimes even money. He said it's important to help people when they need it most." Amanda stared at the girl, the words settling heavily in her chest. She had assumed Mr. Elliot was just a poor, irrelevant vendor, but Emily's story painted him in a completely different light. "Why would he do that?" Amanda asked, her voice quieter now. "Because he can," Emily said simply. "He says kindness is what keeps the world going." Amanda looked away, her thoughts spinning. The stories she had heard about Mr. Elliot, combined with Emily's earnest admiration, were chipping away at the image she had constructed of him. As Emily stood to leave, she gave Amanda a reassuring smile. "You'll figure it out," she said. "Just keep the bracelet on." Amanda watched her walk away, the warmth of Emily's kindness lingering even after she disappeared into the night. Later, as Amanda wandered through the market once more, she noticed some of the vendors she had approached earlier. This time, their expressions seemed less guarded, their eyes softer. A woman selling roasted chestnuts waved her over. "Here," the vendor said, handing Amanda a small bag. "You look like you could use this earlier." Amanda blinked in surprise. I don't have any money," she admitted, her voice tinged with embarrassment. The woman smiled. "It's on the house. Just remember, kindness always comes back around." Amanda nodded, her throat tightening with emotion as she took the bag. A man selling scarves nearby overheard the exchange and pointed her in the direction of a nearby shelter where she could get help for the night. These small acts of kindness unraveled something inside Amanda. Each gesture contrasted sharply with the disdain she had once felt toward these people. She had judged them so harshly, assuming their lives lacked meaning or ambition. Yet here they were, offering her compassion without hesitation. As she walked through the quieting market, the bracelet on her wrist pulsed gently, as if in sync with the realization dawning within her. These were people who worked hard, cared for one another, and found ways to give even when they had so little. Amanda paused by a fountain at the edge of the market, her reflection staring back at her. The polished, confident image she had built over the years seemed hollow now, a mask that hid her insecurities and fears. For the first time, she saw herself clearly, not as the successful woman she projected to the world, but as someone deeply flawed, struggling to find her place. The people she had looked down on were not weak or insignificant. They were resilient, strong, and full of quiet dignity. And perhaps, Amanda thought, they had something to teach her after all. As Amanda wandered through the dimly lit streets, the bracelet on her wrist began to pulse more intensely. She couldn't ignore it anymore. There was something about this strange trinket that seemed to respond to her emotions. Every time she thought about the small acts of kindness she had encountered or reflected on her own behavior, the glow grew brighter, as if encouraging her. Sitting down on a bench near the now empty market, Amanda held up her wrist, inspecting the bracelet. The intricate patterns seemed to shimmer in the faint light, almost alive. "What are you?" she murmured. Just then, Emily appeared again, skipping up with her usual cheerful energy. "Still here?" she asked, sitting beside Amanda. Amanda gave her a small smile. "Looks like it. My car's gone, my phone's dead, and, well, I guess I'm learning a lot about myself tonight. Emily giggled. That's what Mr. Elliot's good at, helping people learn. Amanda tilted her head. How does he do it? Why does he even care? Emily's expression turned serious for a moment. Because he knows what it's like to feel lost. He told me once that he used to be a big businessman, like super rich, but he gave it all up to live a simpler life. Amanda stared at her, stunned. Wait, what? He was wealthy. Emily nodded. Yeah, he said he had everything, money, houses, cars, but he wasn't happy. He said real happiness comes from helping others, so he gave most of it away and started selling crafts to meet people and share his stories. Amanda felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. The man she had mocked as irrelevant and pitiable had once been everything she aspired to be. And yet, he had chosen to walk away from it all. I don't understand, Amanda said, shaking her head. Why would anyone give up all of that? Emily shrugged. He says it's because he wanted to find something real. He wanted to make a difference, not just for himself, but for other people. Amanda leaned back, her mind racing. The thought of giving up her success, her carefully crafted life, felt impossible. But at the same time, she couldn't deny the emptiness she often felt, the loneliness she tried so hard to ignore. The bracelet glowed brighter now, its light spilling onto Amanda's lap. Emily noticed and grinned. See? It's working. What's working? Amanda asked, her voice tinged with frustration. The bracelet, Emily said. Mr. Elliot says it shows people what's really inside them. When you're kind or humble, it glows. When you're not, it dims. It's like it knows. Amanda looked down at the glowing bracelet, a lump forming in her throat. Was this why it had started glowing more brightly throughout the evening? Every time she had let go of her pride, even a little, the light had intensified. I need to find him, Amanda said suddenly, standing up. I need to talk to Mr. Elliot. Emily nodded. He usually leaves after the market closes, but maybe he's still nearby. He doesn't live far from here. Amanda felt a surge of urgency. The bracelet's glow was now almost blinding, casting a soft golden light around her wrist. It felt warm, like a heartbeat, and for the first time, Amanda felt a strange sense of clarity. She needed to apologize to Mr. Elliot, not just for mocking him, but for everything. The arrogance, the judgment, the way she had dismissed him without a second thought. Do you know where he lives? Amanda asked Emily, her voice trembling with determination. Emily hesitated. I can show you, but it's kind of far to walk. Amanda shook her head. I don't care. Let's go. The two set off through the quiet streets, the night growing colder. As they walked, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just about finding Mr. Elliot. It was about finding herself, about confronting the person she had become and deciding who she wanted to be. When they finally reached a small, modest house on the edge of the neighborhood, Emily stopped. This is it, she said, pointing to the door. Amanda stared at the house, her heart pounding. The light inside was dim, but she could see the faint shadow of someone moving around. She raised her hand to knock but hesitated. What if he didn't want to see her? What if it was too late to make things right? The bracelet pulsed again, its glow steady and unwavering, as if urging her forward. Taking a deep breath, Amanda knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the still night. A moment later, the door creaked open, and there stood Mr. Elliot, his kind eyes widening in surprise as he saw her. Amanda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. All the emotions of the day, her frustration, her humiliation, her realizations, swirled inside her, threatening to spill over. Mr. Elliot gave her a gentle smile. I was wondering when you'd come back, he said softly. The glow of the bracelet seemed to envelop them both, and for a moment, Amanda felt a profound sense of peace, as though she had finally taken the first step towards something she hadn't even known she was searching for. As Amanda stood in front of Mr. Elliot's modest home, bathed in the soft glow of the bracelet, her hand trembled slightly. Before she could speak, Mr. Elliot's warm smile and kind eyes disarmed her. He stepped aside, motioning for her to come in, and Amanda hesitated only for a moment before crossing the threshold. Inside, the home was simple but inviting, filled with handmade decorations and shelves lined with books and photographs. Amanda's gaze landed on a framed picture of a younger Mr. Elliot standing beside a grand office building, a small plaque beneath it reading, Elliot Holdings Incorporated, Grand Opening, 1995. "You really were someone important," Amanda murmured, unable to hide her surprise. Mr. Elliot chuckled softly as he poured her a cup of tea. "I like to think I still am, just in a different way now," he said, handing her the steaming cup. Amanda sat at the small kitchen table, her thoughts racing. The weight of the bracelet on her wrist was impossible to ignore, its faint warmth grounding her in the moment. I owe you an apology," Amanda began, her voice faltering. "The way I spoke to you earlier, it was cruel, and I judged you without knowing anything about you." Mr. Elliot took a seat across from her, his expression gentle. "Apology accepted, Amanda. But tell me, what brought you back here tonight?" Amanda hesitated, running her fingers over the bracelet. "This," she said finally, holding up her wrist. "It's been glowing all night, and it feels like it's trying to tell me something." Mr. Elliot's eyes twinkled. "It's not the bracelet, Amanda. It's you." His words hit her like a jolt. But before she could respond, she felt something beneath the bracelet's surface shift. Startled, she removed it from her wrist and turned it over in her hands. Her fingers grazed a hidden clasp, and with a soft click, a small compartment opened. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Amanda carefully unfolded it, her breath catching as she read the words. "True wealth lies in what you give, not what you own." The message was simple, but its meaning struck her deeply. Her mind flashed back to all the moments that had led her here. The small acts of kindness from strangers, Emily's stories about Mr. Elliot, the humiliation she had felt when stripped of her wealth. "It's beautiful," she said softly, her voice trembling. "Did you write this?" Mr. Elliot nodded, his expression turning reflective. "I wrote it a long time ago, during a very different chapter of my life. Back then, I thought success was about climbing higher, earning more, and having people admire me. But the higher I climbed, the lonelier I felt. When I finally realized that true fulfillment comes from connection and generosity, I decided to make a change." Amanda stared at him, trying to imagine the life he had left behind. "You gave it all up. Why? Weren't you scared?" "Oh, I was terrified," Mr. Elliot admitted with a chuckle. "But I was more afraid of living a life without meaning. The day I decided to walk away from it all was the day I started to feel truly free." Amanda looked down at the bracelet, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She had spent her entire life chasing success, determined to escape the poverty of her childhood. But in doing so, she had built walls around herself, shutting out anything or anyone that didn't align with her vision of wealth and power. "It's funny," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've spent so long trying to prove I'm better than where I came from. But now, I feel like I've been running in the wrong direction this whole time." Mr. Elliot reached across the table, placing a comforting hand over hers. "It's never too late to change direction, Amanda. The path you're on doesn't have to define you." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she quickly blinked them away. "I don't even know where to start." "Start small," Mr. Elliot said. "Kindness has a way of growing, like ripples in a pond. And you've already taken the first step by coming here." Before Amanda could respond, there was a knock at the door. Mr. Elliot rose to answer it, and when he opened it, a small group of people from the market stood outside, holding baskets of food and other gifts. "Mr. Elliot," one of the women exclaimed, "we just wanted to thank you for everything you've done for us. You're always there when we need you, and we wanted to return the favor." Amanda watched in awe as the group entered, their gratitude toward Mr. Elliot palpable. They shared stories of how he had helped them through difficult times, each one more touching than the last. As the room filled with warmth and laughter, Amanda felt a shift within her. For the first time, she saw the true value of community, of selflessness, of giving without expecting anything in return. When the group finally left, Amanda turned to Mr. Elliot, her resolve clear. "I want to be better," she said. "I don't know how yet, but I want to try." Mr. Elliot smiled, his eyes filled with pride. "That's all anyone can do, Amanda. Just try." The bracelet, still in her hand, glowed brightly once more, as if affirming her decision. Amanda slipped it back onto her wrist, feeling its weight in a new way, not as a burden, but as a reminder of the person she wanted to become. Amanda left Mr. Elliot's home with a renewed sense of purpose. The bracelet still glowed faintly, its warmth feeling like both a comfort and a guide. As she walked back into the market, the vibrant energy of the vendors and customers no longer felt overwhelming or beneath her. It felt alive, real, and full of possibilities she had never noticed before. Determined to make amends, Amanda began approaching the vendors she had previously insulted or ignored. Her first stop was a flower stall run by Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman whose floral arrangements Amanda had dismissed as basic earlier in the day. "I owe you an apology," Amanda said, her voice steady but sincere. "I was rude to you, and I had no right to judge your work. Your flowers are beautiful, and I'd like to buy one. If you'll let me." Mrs. Patel's wary expression softened into a warm smile. "An apology like that is worth more than money, my dear. Here, take this." She handed Amanda a small bouquet of daisies, their simple elegance bringing a smile to Amanda's face. As Amanda moved through the market, she continued to apologize to the vendors she had wronged. She listened to their stories, how they had started their businesses, the struggles they faced, and the dreams they held on to. Each conversation deepened Amanda's understanding of the people around her, and she found herself marveling at their resilience and creativity. At a pottery stall, Amanda met Carlos, a young artist who had been struggling to attract customers. Seeing his frustration, Amanda offered to help. "Your work is incredible," she said, admiring a set of intricately painted vases. "Let me show people how amazing it is." Amanda stood by Carlos's stall, calling out to passers-by and sharing enthusiastic descriptions of his work. Her confidence and charisma, once a source of arrogance, now became tools to uplift someone else. To her surprise, customers began flocking to the stall, purchasing nearly everything Carlos had displayed. "Thank you," Carlos said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've never had a day like this." "It's the least I can do," Amanda replied, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with material success. As the day went on, Amanda's interactions began to feel less like penance and more like genuine connection. Her walls of pride and insecurity were slowly crumbling, replaced by a newfound appreciation for the world around her. It was during one of these moments that Emily appeared again, clutching a sketch pad. "Amanda!" she called out, running up to her with a wide grin. "I've been looking for you." Amanda knelt to Emily's level, noticing the sketches in her hands. "What's this?" "It's my dream," Emily said shyly, flipping through pages filled with designs for buildings and parks. "I want to be an architect one day. Mr. Elliot said I should never give up, but it feels so far away." Amanda felt a pang of recognition. Emily's aspirations reminded her of her younger self, driven by ambition but unsure of where to start. "It's not far away," Amanda said, her tone firm but encouraging. "You're already working toward it with these drawings. Keep going and don't let anyone tell you it's impossible." Emily's eyes lit up. "Really? You think I can do it?" "I know you can," Amanda replied, a smile spreading across her face. "And I'll help you. Whatever you need, supplies, advice, connections, I'll be here for you." Emily threw her arms around Amanda in a grateful hug, and for the first time in years, Amanda felt a sense of purpose beyond her own success. She had the power to help someone else achieve their dreams, and the realization filled her with joy. As the sun began to set, Amanda found herself back at Mr. Elliot's stall, which was now bustling with customers. She stood nearby, watching as he greeted each person with the same warmth and kindness that had once baffled her. When the crowd thinned, Amanda approached him, holding out the bouquet of daisies Mrs. Patel had given her. "Thank you," she said simply. Mr. Elliot took the flowers with a knowing smile. "You're beginning to understand, aren't you?" Amanda nodded. "It's not about what you take. It's about what you give. I've been so focused on proving my worth that I forgot the value of connection, of kindness." "You've taken the first step," Mr. Elliot said. "And that's always the hardest one." Amanda glanced at the bracelet, which now glowed with a steady, golden light. "Does it ever stop glowing?" she asked, half joking. Mr. Elliot chuckled. "That depends on you. The more you live with kindness and humility, the brighter it will shine." Amanda smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. She looked around the market, seeing not just vendors and customers, but a community, one she was now a part of. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of losing her wealth or status. She had found something far more valuable. As she walked away from Mr. Elliot's stall, Emily by her side, Amanda felt a renewed sense of hope. She had a long way to go, but she was ready to start the journey. Amanda's transformation reached its peak when she decided to organize a surprise event for the market vendors. She worked tirelessly throughout the evening, contacting people in the community, using her business acumen, and leveraging her network to pull together a showcase event. Amanda arranged for banners, live music, and special highlights of each vendor's unique craft, turning the once-overlooked market into the center of attention. On the day of the event, the vendors were hesitant at first, unsure if Amanda's sudden enthusiasm was genuine. But as they saw the care and detail she had put into the arrangements, their doubts began to fade. Amanda greeted each vendor personally, guiding them to their spotlight areas and helping them set up their best products. She even arranged for free refreshments and a small stage for performers to draw in a crowd. As the showcase began, Amanda stepped to the center of the market, addressing the gathered crowd with a microphone in hand. "Welcome, everyone," she said, her voice strong but laced with genuine humility. "Today, we're here to celebrate the incredible talent, resilience, and creativity of this market community. These vendors are more than just shopkeepers. They're artists, dreamers, and the heart of this town." Her words stirred the crowd, and customers who had previously overlooked the market began flocking to the stalls. Vendors who once struggled to sell their goods now found themselves overwhelmed with demand. Mrs. Patel's flower stall was nearly empty within an hour. Carlos's pottery pieces became the talk of the event, and Mr. Elliot's handmade crafts sold out completely. The glowing bracelet on Amanda's wrist seemed to radiate brighter with every moment of kindness and generosity. It was as though it symbolized the collective goodwill being created in the market that day. As the event progressed, Amanda found herself in quiet moments of reflection. The joy on the vendors' faces, the excited chatter of customers, and the sense of unity filling the air all stood in stark contrast to the lonely, hollow world she had left behind. For the first time, Amanda felt truly alive, not because of material success, but because of the connection she had built and the impact she had made. As the sun began to set, Amanda stood with Emily, who clung to her side like a shadow. "This is amazing," Emily said, her eyes sparkling as she watched the bustling market. "You did all this." "We did this," Amanda corrected, smiling down at her. However, as the event began to wind down, Amanda realized that her old life was waiting for her. She had meetings scheduled, deals to close, and a reputation to maintain. But as she looked around the market, at the friends she had made, the lessons she had learned, and the new sense of purpose she had found, Amanda felt a pang of doubt. Could she truly go back to her old ways? The thought of returning to her high-rise office, luxury car, and designer wardrobe suddenly felt hollow. She realized that while she had once defined herself by her wealth and status, she now yearned for something deeper. The bracelet, glowing steadily, seemed to beckon her toward a different path. Amanda felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her, and for the first time in years, she was uncertain about her future. She turned to Mr. Elliot, who was packing up his stall with the same calm demeanor as always. "Mr. Elliot," she said, her voice wavering, "how did you do it? How did you walk away from everything and choose this life?" Mr. Elliot paused, looking at her with a mix of wisdom and kindness. "It wasn't easy," he admitted, "but I realized that true happiness isn't about what you have. It's about who you are. It's about living a life that aligns with your values and fills your soul. You don't have to give up everything to find that, Amanda. You just have to decide what truly matters." Amanda nodded, her heart heavy with emotion. The crowd was dispersing, and the vendors were packing up, their faces glowing with gratitude and joy. The market that had once seemed chaotic and beneath her now felt like home. Amanda looked at Emily, who was sketching designs for new market stalls in her notebook. She thought of the people she had helped, the relationships she had built, and the woman she had become. As the last rays of sunlight bathed the market in a golden glow, Amanda made her decision. She turned to Mr. Elliot and Emily, her voice steady but filled with determination. "I'm not going back to my old life, not like before. I don't know exactly what's next, but I want it to mean something." Mr. Elliot smiled, his eyes twinkling. "That's the first step. The rest will follow." Amanda took one last look at the market, the bracelet warm against her skin. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. Instead, she felt a sense of peace, knowing that she was finally walking in the right direction. Amanda stood at the heart of the market, surrounded by the very people she had once dismissed. The vendors, now chatting and laughing after the success of the day's event, looked at her with a mix of gratitude and newfound respect. Amanda felt a bittersweet pang in her chest. She had finally found a place where she felt connected, but she knew it was time to leave. She approached Mr. Elliot, who was finishing packing up his stall. His calm demeanor and gentle smile remained as steady as ever, despite the bustling energy around them. Amanda hesitated for a moment, then held out her hand to him. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "For everything, for the lesson, for the patience, for the bracelet, and for showing me that life can be so much more than I thought it was." Mr. Elliot shook her hand warmly, his eyes filled with understanding. "You've done the hard work, Amanda. You opened your heart. That's something no one can teach you. It's something you chose to do." Amanda looked down at the glowing bracelet on her wrist. It felt warm, as if it was alive, and the soft light seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. With a deep breath, she slipped it off and handed it back to Mr. Elliot. "I think this belongs to you," she said. Mr. Elliot shook his head. "No, Amanda. It was never about the bracelet. It was always about you. Keep it as a reminder of the journey you've been on." Tears pricked at the corners of Amanda's eyes as she nodded, slipping the bracelet back onto her wrist. She turned to face the rest of the market, where vendors were beginning to pack up their stalls for the day. Taking a deep breath, she climbed onto a small box to address the crowd. "Everyone," she called, her voice steady and strong. The vendors turned their attention to her, curiosity sparking in their eyes. "I want to thank you all for today, for showing me what true strength, kindness, and community look like. I came here with the wrong perspective, and I hurt many of you with my words and actions. For that, I'm truly sorry." The vendors exchanged glances, some nodding, others offering small smiles. Encouraged, Amanda continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I've spent so much of my life chasing wealth and status, thinking they would bring me happiness. But today, you've shown me that happiness isn't about what you have. It's about what you give. It's about the connections you build and the lives you touch. You've taught me something I'll never forget." Amanda stepped down from the box, pulling out a folded envelope from her bag. She approached the head of the vendor association, a woman named Clara, who had been skeptical of Amanda from the start. "This is for the market," Amanda said, handing Clara the envelope. "It's a donation to help fund improvements, provide resources for vendors, and create opportunities for all of you to thrive." Clara opened the envelope, her eyes widening as she saw the amount written inside. She looked up at Amanda, her expression a mixture of shock and gratitude. This is more than we could have ever imagined," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Thank you." The crowd erupted into applause, and Amanda felt a deep warmth in her chest, unlike anything she had felt before. It wasn't the applause that moved her. It was the knowledge that she had made a real difference. Later, as the market emptied out and the sun dipped below the horizon, Amanda stood with Mr. Elliot and Emily one last time. "What will you do now?" Emily asked, her eyes wide with curiosity. Amanda smiled, looking down at the bracelet on her wrist. "I'm going to use what I have to help others. I've spent so much of my life focused on myself. It's time to give back." She turned to Mr. Elliot. "I want to start a program to support small vendors like you. Funding, resources, mentorship. Whatever it takes to help people build something meaningful. Would you be willing to help me?" Mr. Elliot's eyes sparkled with pride. "I'd be honored," he said simply. Amanda knelt down to Emily's level, placing a hand on the young girl's shoulder. "And you," she said, smiling. "I'll be here to help you achieve your dreams too. Whatever you need, I'll be there." Emily beamed, her excitement shining brighter than the setting sun. As Amanda walked away from the market that evening, the bracelet glowed steadily on her wrist, a constant reminder of the lessons she had learned. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but for the first time in her life, she felt at peace. She had found her purpose, not in wealth or status, but in kindness, connection, and the simple act of giving. The market had changed her, and now she was ready to change the world. As Amanda drove away from the market, the glow of the bracelet dimmed to a soft, steady pulse, as if it had found peace alongside her. Her mind swirled with the lessons she had learned in just a single day. The moments of humiliation and vulnerability, the warmth of unexpected kindness, and the wisdom of a man who had chosen a path so different from her own, all of it culminated in a profound realization that she could no longer ignore. Looking out at the city lights in the distance, Amanda thought back to her younger self, the determined, ambitious girl who had fought her way out of poverty, equating material wealth with freedom. She had built her life on the idea that success was measured by what she owned and the power she wielded. But standing in that market, stripped of her wallet, her car, and even her usual confidence, she had found something far more valuable. She had found connection. Amanda replayed the faces of the vendors in her mind. Clara, with her guarded but genuine smile. Emily, with her boundless hope and dreams, and Mr. Elliot, who had taught her without judgment or expectation. Each of them had shown her that kindness was not a weakness, but a strength, a bridge that brought people together in a way that money and status never could. Her thoughts turned to Mr. Elliot's words and the note hidden in the bracelet. Asterisk, true wealth lies in what you give, not what you own. Asterisk, it wasn't just about money, she realized, but about giving time, energy, and compassion. It was about being present in someone else's story, helping them write a chapter they couldn't finish alone. For years, Amanda had viewed the world through a lens of scarcity, where one person's gain meant another's loss. But her time at the market had opened her eyes to a different truth. When people support one another, everyone rises. Kindness creates ripples, and those ripples can grow into waves of change. Amanda smiled as she remembered Emily's innocent question earlier that day. "Why do you think Mr. Elliot gave you the bracelet?" At the time, Amanda hadn't known the answer, but now she understood. The bracelet wasn't a magical object. It was a mirror reflecting the choices she made and the person she could become. It had shown her that even the smallest act of kindness could illuminate a path forward, not just for herself but for those around her. Pulling into her driveway, Amanda felt a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in years. She was no longer carrying the weight of proving her worth to the world. Instead, she was focused on the possibilities ahead, of how she could use her resources to make a difference, not just for the vendors she had met, but for countless others like them. She thought of the market vibrant with life, and filled with people who had embraced her despite her mistakes. It was a microcosm of what the world could be, a place where kindness and understanding triumphed over judgment and division. The universal lesson was clear to her now. Life's greatest riches aren't found in bank accounts or boardrooms, but in the bonds we form and the love we share. Success isn't about standing above others. It's about lifting them up. Amanda reached for her phone and began typing an email to her team. She outlined her vision for a new initiative, a foundation that would empower small businesses and underserved communities, providing resources, mentorship, and opportunities to thrive. Before she hit send, she paused, her fingers brushing against the bracelet. She thought of Mr. Elliott's calm smile, Emily's wide-eyed optimism, and the chorus of vendors who had reminded her what humanity truly looked like. With a deep breath, Amanda whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." In that moment, she knew that the lessons she had learned weren't just for her. They were meant to be shared, to inspire others to see the power of kindness and the beauty of connection. And as the bracelet glowed softly on her wrist, Amanda resolved to carry those lessons forward, not as a debt to repay, but as a gift to give. Amanda's life took on a new rhythm, one that no longer revolved around luxury and status, but around purpose and connection. She had launched her foundation, aptly named the Giving Hands Initiative, with the mission of empowering underprivileged artisans. The foundation offered resources, training, and a platform for these craftspeople to showcase their talents to a wider audience. Amanda personally ensured that the first beneficiaries were the vendors from the market that had changed her life. Sitting in her new, modest office overlooking a community art center, Amanda glanced at the bracelet resting on her desk. The once glowing trinket had faded into a quiet stillness, yet it remained a powerful symbol of her journey. Its presence reminded her of where she had started, the mistakes she had made, and the profound transformation she had undergone. She picked up the bracelet and turned it over in her hand. Its intricate design, once dismissed as cheap, now represented something far greater: the resilience, creativity, and spirit of the people she had met at the market. It was a tangible piece of the lessons she had learned: the value of humility, the strength in community, and the undeniable truth that life's greatest treasures couldn't be bought. One day, Amanda decided to revisit the market, this time with a different purpose. She didn't wear designer clothes or carry an air of superiority. Instead, she dressed simply and brought a collection of brochures and resources to share with the vendors. As she walked through the familiar stalls, the sights and sounds felt different, warmer, and more inviting. She greeted Clara first, who hugged her tightly and beamed with pride as she showed Amanda her new booth, now flourishing with colorful scarves and woven goods. Amanda spent time with each vendor, listening to their stories, learning about their dreams, and sharing laughs and memories. When Amanda reached Mr. Elliott's stall, she found him sitting in his usual chair, crafting another bracelet. He looked up with his kind, knowing smile. "You came back," he said, his tone gentle and pleased. "I had to," Amanda replied. "I owe so much to you, and to everyone here." Mr. Elliott chuckled. "You don't owe us anything, Amanda. The real gift was discovering your own heart." They spoke for a while longer, and as the sun began to set, Amanda took a moment to look around the market. It was alive with energy, laughter, and the hum of people connecting. She realized it wasn't just a market she had returned to. It was a sense of belonging she had never known she needed. As Amanda prepared to leave, Emily ran up to her, waving a small handmade bracelet she had crafted herself. "For you," Emily said with a grin. "So you'll never forget what you taught us, too." Amanda knelt to Emily's height and accepted the bracelet, tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Emily. I'll treasure this forever." The video ends with Amanda walking through the market, now a friend rather than a stranger. She pauses to help a vendor carry their goods, her laughter mingling with the sounds of the bustling crowd. The screen fades to black as Amanda's voice narrates her closing reflection. In the end, life isn't about what you achieve or what you own. It's about the lives you touch, the kindness you show, and the legacy you leave behind. True wealth is found in the connections we make and the love we give. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me, always. The screen displays the words asterisk, dedicated to those who remind us of the power of kindness and community. Asterisk as the final note of soft music plays. Amanda's Foundation logo appears, followed by the tagline, asterisk together, we rise. Asterisk